Radio New Zealand International, the voice of the Pacific. You can hear our programs from 18 until 22 hours UTC on 13785 kHz in the 21 metre band. From 22 until 0630 hours, listen on 17770 kHz in the 16 metre band. And from 0630 until 12 hours UTC, we broadcast on 9700 kHz in the 31 metre band. Once again, you can hear us from 18 until 22 hours on 13785 kHz. From 22 to 0630 hours on 17770 kHz. And from 0630 until 12 hours on 9700 kHz. This is Radio New Zealand International, the voice of the Pacific.
From Radio New Zealand International, this is Mailbox. Hello, I'm Tony King, and welcome to Mailbox. Today we visit Black Burnett in Texas, go back to some 12th century history in Italy, and announce some exciting new musical offerings for you to add to your music library. Arthur Cushen will join us with his DX news, and from what he tells us, it's that winter season again. And our first letter today comes from Czechoslovakia, so it's a very good evening to Vladimir Janovic, who writes from Trnava in Czechoslovakia. And I'm hoping today that you're hearing us loud and clear, perhaps on our Friday frequency of 13785 kHz in the 22 metre band. And thank you for your questions. Now, the questions on radio matters. Our transmitter power is 100 kilowatts, and our technical people tell me our antenna array gives us a 20 dB gain on that power. You also asked if we receive Radio Prague in New Zealand. Well, we certainly do, and I think that was one of the first European stations I heard when I started my shortwave listening several decades ago, and I have the black and white QSL cards in my collection today. And while satellite radio feeds to remote transmitters are common for a number of very large international broadcasters, Radio New Zealand International has no need for such a facility in broadcasting to its immediate audience in the Pacific. And we hope by now you've been able to get some more information about shortwave stations in the Pacific area, Vladimir. Our very best wishes to you, Vladimir Janovic, there in Trnava in Czechoslovakia. Well, our next letter is a heavyweight. In fact, it's loaded down with a line-up of Finnish coins. Not perhaps enough for me to get the next flight out to Finland, but perhaps a happy reminder of my holiday there some years ago. And a big hello then to Henri Engstrom of Paronen in Finland. And your brochure pinpoints that to be somewhere near Turku. And I see also from a map I was studying an area of very many islands and inlets. And rather naturally, I see from the little booklet that sailing and water sports are very popular. Soccer, too. And for those bargain hunters, it would seem that auctions of antiques are also popular. And I see that only after a year of shortwave listening, you've collected QSL cards from 30 stations in 27 countries. So your totals are mounting up nicely. Thank you, Henri, for that glimpse of your part of Finland, and we hope to hear from you again soon. And I'll just put those coins aside, and perhaps the bank would be interested in them. All the very best to you there in Finland. And just across the water to Sweden now to call Kent Hedlund of Umeå, who tells us that our schedule is now appearing on an international computer bulletin board via CSMS, and our thanks to whoever was responsible for placing that information on the board. And I see, Kent, that you're a student at the Department of Computer Science at Umeå and have been shortwave listening since 1985, and you're active in soccer, ice hockey, athletics and skiing. A busy year indeed for you. And yet time to send us a good reception report at Radio New Zealand International. Thank you, Kent, for your report and your letter, and our very best wishes to you with your studies. Kent Hedlund of Umeå in Sweden. And let's focus now on Italy, and hello to Massimo Cerveglieri of Alessandria. And what a lineup of listening gear and all the other equipment. Let's see, 2 computer systems, slow scan TV, Meteosat and fax reception, and a video reader for CW and RTTY. Indeed, you're capturing the world from all angles, aren't you, Massimo? And thank you, too, for the leaflet on Alessandria, described as the straw city from its beginnings in 1169. And if I could just quote from your brochure, Alessandria was built in 1169 by the Lombard League to bar the way to Frederick I of Stavia, who was called Redbeard. And the city was built in such a hurry that the roofs were made of straw. And it was from this that the town got its name. The tales say that after a long siege, when the town was on the point of surrendering, an intelligent man called Gagliardo asked for the last wheat sack. And after having given it to a cow, he let it go out of the walls of the town. The besiegers killed it, and having found it was full of wheat, thought the city had a lot of wheat, and if they could already spare it for animals. Redbeard was stopped in his siege, and the town was saved. And today, Alessandria is in the middle of the industrial triangle and has every type of industry, chemical, nuclear, and electronic. And I think it says as an aside, it's famous for its golden art, and was the native city of Borsellino, whose hats have made a style. So thank you for that sidelight on the town of Alessandria there in Italy, and all our very best wishes to you there, Massimo Cerveglieri. Well, it's time for us to talk about the Radio International T-shirt and new offers from Radio New Zealand International. Firstly, on our T-shirts, we now accept credit cards in payment for our T-shirts and also for the records I'm about to tell you about. We accept both MasterCard and Visa, so all you need to call to us is your chest size, your card number and its expiry date, and of course, your name and address. And we're now offering Maori cassettes of traditional and popular Maori and European New Zealand music for just $15 US. Now, we're putting a catalogue in with our QSL mailings from now on. Now, our first quite spectacular album is by the fine Maori entertainer Howard Morrison. It's a live concert recorded by Radio New Zealand at the Michael Farrell Centre here in Wellington very recently. And it's a family affair indeed, with Howard Morrison and his very talented family and top musicians in a concert of Maori and European music. Let's listen to a sample of Howard Morrison. Radio New Zealand International can send you that concert recording on cassette or compact disc if you'd like to write to us at Radio New Zealand International, Post Office Box 2092, Wellington in New Zealand. The Howard Morrison cassette is $15 US, $15 US, or the equivalent in your currency, or for the compact disc, $20 US. And we accept MasterCard and Visa credit cards to make ordering easy. So add some music from New Zealand to your record library with Howard Morrison live in concert. It's now time for us to move down to the deep south in Invercargill and Arthur Cushen. Well, it's almost winter, and what have you been hearing, Arthur?
Well, of course, down in the south it means that the evenings are much longer, and medium wave is predominant. And across from Australia, we noticed that the long-established Melbourne station 3OK, which used to be on 1503, has moved to 1116 kHz, 24 hours a day, and we're hearing it under the Radio New Zealand transmitter at Nelson. And from Indonesia, an interesting signal, Radio Republic Indonesia on 3325, being heard at 1100 with news in Indonesian relayed from Jakarta. The reason for this is, as listeners will know, there is a revolt in the Northern Solomons, and that transmitter is still off that frequency, giving us a chance to hear this rather rare Indonesian signal. And in New Zealand, Radio Rira is planned for more stations. The 540 kHz station for New Plymouth, there's a 110-metre tower erected, and they're waiting on telegram lines at the moment. On 648, there's a broadcast from Napier, and that's expected to commence in July. And right there in Wellington, 972 is a new Reamer frequency, and that'll be introduced shortly. They're presently on 1503, synchronised with Reamer in Christchurch. That means that those two stations, Christchurch and Wellington, of Reamer will then have independent frequencies. Now, the entity station on 1476 is the station 1XD, which is formerly on 1548. This is a county's radio announcing as info music, and they're giving a lot of information from the Auckland Airport, the international airport, on flight arrivals and departures. Auckland Airport were one of the successful tenderers for an AM frequency, and looks as these two groups may have combined to, in the meantime, to operate a simultaneous program with both sections in mind. From Papua New Guinea, last year we were widely reporting the reception of Western Highland, and they were heard on 5965 kHz, and they had told me that those frequencies are used for a schools broadcast, and that's on the air from 2230 to 0600 UTC. The reason why they run their full transmission last year on that channel is that their other frequency, 3374, which is generally their nighttime channel, was off the air due to technical faults.
And I think further out in the Pacific, you've got some news from Tahiti, Arthur.
Well, Tahiti at the moment is a very good signal, but only for about 30 minutes. 11825 is clear between 0330 and 0400 until other transmitters open that channel, and it's not, though we're close to Tahiti, it's not an easy station to hear for us in the South Pacific, but there's a chance to hear Tahiti without any interference in that period around 0330. And from Taiwan, the Voice of Free China, 17750, they're broadcasting at 2200 in English. A variety of programs. I noticed on a Monday they're running a science program.
Arthur, I gather from time to time you do some meter band surveys, and the 25-meter band's been getting your attention lately. What have you got to tell us about that?
Yes, we're doing a 25-meter band survey for Radio Canada at the moment, and it's interesting to note that despite the schedules and things like that, you come up with a lot of interesting signals which are not allocated to channels. On 11705, we're hearing Deutsche Welle opening at 0400, mixed with Paris. In 11715, we're hearing Mali with a relay of Radio Beijing around 0300. And on 11820, we hear Far East Broadcasting Association, Seychelles, and their familiar interval signal at 0315. A little higher up at 11840, Brisbane, Portugal. Very good in the moment in English. 0300 is sign-off. The transmission is actually 0230 to 0300, but that's a broadcast which is only Monday to Friday only, no weekend transmissions. 11865 at 0300 is Norway, and at 0330 it's Denmark, using, of course, the same transmitter with two program services. And on 11925, we're hearing the relay through the Austrian radio, Radio Canada International. It's on there now for 1 hour, French at 0300, and then they move into Arabic at 0330. But there is some interference on the channel from Radio Moscow.
And it's, as we said at the start, Latin American time, Arthur, and I gather things are picking up down there on medium wave.
They are picking up on medium wave. Firstly, a couple of items from DX Australia that took my interest. That was the Brazilian station on 5980, and that was heard at 0930, and also from Colombia, nearby Colombia, in 6075, Caracol has been reported around 0930 also. But for Latin American medium wave, late April was an excellent time for listening. And just to run down the dial, some of the interesting ones on 660, we heard a Chile in there at 0500. 690, our biggest thrill, I think, would be HCJB at 0900. And a surprising signal there. On 790 is Radio Programas in Peru with a relay of the same program on 730. On 1270, a new Chilean, which we haven't yet identified. On 1470, Antenna 1 in Lima, Peru, reported to be using 25 kilowatt. We're hearing this as early as 0330 to past 1000, a very strong signal. and probably the best pattern at the moment. And on the top end of the dial, a 1540 Radio Star. That's in Trujillo, in Peru, and they've been heard around 0500 and a little later.
Well, that's certainly a great lineup, and I'm sure the envy of many DXs outside the Pacific Basin. Thank you, Arthur, for that, and we'll look forward to checking up with you again in 2 weeks' time.
Thank you, Tony.
You're with Mailbox on Radio New Zealand International.
The best in Kiwi music. Radio New Zealand International. Giving a taste of Kiwi music to thousands of people in Memphis, Tennessee. New Zealand is this year's feature country at Memphis in May. Radio stations throughout the state will be playing the best of New Zealand's music. So listen throughout May for Kiwi music on these stations.
Kiwi music on WLOK AM, WDIA AM, WEDR FM, KPYR FM, WRVR FM, and WMC AM FM.
Kiwi music throughout May and all year round on Radio New Zealand International. 17770 kHz, the voice of the Pacific.
And for those listeners who can't hear the stations in Memphis, Tennessee, we return to Howard Morrison with My Mother's Eyes. My Mother's Eyes from Sir Howard Morrison. Howard Morrison inclusive, recorded in Wellington and available from Radio New Zealand International. And Howard Morrison was knighted by Her Majesty the Queen last year for his contribution to New Zealand entertainment. And now back to our letters and across to Australia. And on the question of DX clubs, Don Rhodes of Yarragon reminds me of the active clubs in Australia for overseas DXs who may wish to keep in touch with DX activity from down under. And he speaks specifically of DX Australia, a very active club based in Victoria. And if you'd like more details of DX Australia, write to me here at Radio New Zealand International, and I'll pass your inquiry on to Don Rhodes. And I can also do that, of course, for listeners who may wish to find out about DX and shortwave listener clubs here in New Zealand. And thank you, Don, for reminding me to keep the Australian flag flying, and all the very best to you and members of DX Australia. And here's a howdy from Burke Burnett on a postcard of Texas Longhorn cattle, and it's a howdy to you, Bill. Bill Stray of Cherokee Circle, Burke Burnett in Texas. And we hope today, Bill, that the family are tuned in too. And where exactly is Burke Burnett? Well, I say it's in North Texas in the USA, on a flat prairie which is hot in summer, that's 45 degrees Celsius, and cold during short winter, that's minus 20 degrees Celsius. Burke Burnett is a small town of 10,000 people, and wheat, cotton and cattle farming is its main industry. My job is as the engineering and quality manager at a gas turbine aircraft engine overhaul company in the nearby city of Wichita Falls. In the early part of this century, it was in Burke Burnett where much of the first Texas oil was held, and the town quickly became wealthy. And the town was featured in the 1941 movie Boomtown, which reflected its earlier rise to fame. And oil is still produced in this area, but at a far lower quantity than years ago.
This is Radio New Zealand International, the voice of the Pacific. You can hear our programs from 18 until 22 hours UTC on 13785 kHz in the 21 metre band. From 22 until 0630 hours, listen on 17770 kHz in the 16 metre band. And from 0630 until 12 hours UTC, we broadcast on 9700 kHz in the 31 metre band. Once again, you can hear us from 18 until 22 hours on 13785 kHz. From 22 to 0630 hours on 17770 kHz, and from 0630 until 12 hours on 9700 kHz. This is Radio New Zealand International, the voice of the Pacific.
From Radio New Zealand International, this is Mailbox.